Good morning and welcome to Emma's Faith Diaries. So last week we were talking about the Pharisees and I was taking my daughters to Bible camp before the week, and now I'm going to pick them up, and it's quite a long journey, and God was just showing me more stuff this week that I believe He wants me to talk about. But before we get to that, we'll do that in a different video. I'm just driving and I'm listening to the voice of God, and He brought back to my remembrance when I was 16 years old. So this is a testimony of God's faithfulness in my life. So when I was 16, I was studying for my A-levels, and they were really quite hard. I was finding them very difficult. I had moved schools from my secondary school over to a grammar school to do my A-levels, and I wanted to study like nursing or medicine or something medical or lab work, whatever. This is just was in my heart. And at 16 I remember sitting in church and I was praying, and I remember asking God to make me like a doctor or something to do with medicine. I wanted to do something with medicine, and I think in my heart I was like, I want to be a doctor, but God kept telling me nurse and I didn't even realise it at the time, but this was what kept coming into my heart. And as I was sitting in that service and I'm praying to God, and I'm really genuinely asking Him this, it's like a simple prayer, like, Lord, will you do this for me? And He said to me, I'll do it. Yes, I will let you do medicine. And just like that, and I believe I really heard the voice of God at 16. And just at that, I accepted it and I got on with my life. And at the same time, I'm praying to God to bring me my boyfriend. So you've got these two conflicting ideas of starting a career pathway and studying to get this career, and also really wanting to have a boyfriend, because all I ever wanted to be was a mum. Like, I knew I was born to be a mum. That was it. Like, there was no persuading me otherwise. And I loved kids. I always done children's church in church and everything. I was always doing the kids ministry. Still do kids ministry. And I don't know what that is. God it's always just give me a heart for like children. I don't know. I don't really fully understand that, but that's what He has me in. It must be the current nature that He put inside me, the gift of like a mercy gift, that mercy gift that makes me cry all the time. So that's fine. And then of course I meet my husband, but all the time I'm studying, and this is how faithful God is when we are not faithful. That scripture is in Timothy, or is it in Peter? I can't remember. Goodness, I should really memorize my scriptures. I think it's Timothy. Anyway, it said, maybe it's not actually. I'll Google it and I'll put it down below, or Google it yourselves. But it basically says, if you deny me, I'll deny you, and if you do this, I'll do that. But at the end of that scripture it says, if you're unfaithful, I will always be faithful. And God started like talking to me about this morning, and even at that time God gave me He put the desire in my heart to want those things, and then God gave me those things. Now the medicine one has taken, so that promise was spoken when I was 16, and I am now 41, and it's about to be completely fulfilled. So it's a long time, but all the while God will make you work towards that. He hasn't forgotten. Sometimes that promise can be fulfilled until studying my A-levels and I fall pregnant. I wasn't married to my husband at this time. I fall pregnant with my oldest son. And the shame, I carried that for many, 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 many years. The shame come from my mum and her religious mindset. And also I felt it from other people. But I don't know whether that was necessarily true, because nobody in my church treated me less. But my mum was embarrassed because of what I had done. And her behaviour around that time during my pregnancy was not the best. But anyway, so I'm pregnant and I have my oldest son. I think I fell pregnant at 17 and about to be 18, because I had him when I just turned 18, I think. Just before my 18th. He was born in May and I was 18 in August. And I think that's right. I just only got married when I was 18. Must have been just becoming 19, so I must have had Daniel. I can't remember. Anyway, I was young and wasn't married. And I knew, I was brought up in a Christian home, I knew this was wrong. Anyway, so I'm going ahead. God give me a straightforward enough birth, a healthy son, and I drop out of school because, number one, the school that I went to was quite a snobby school, and if you weren't achieving, they weren't interested in you, and that's the honest truth. And I found it very difficult. And they did ask me to stay. They had no issue with me being pregnant, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I was so embarrassed. And I left, and I thought, right, well, that's that. I'm never doing nursing, never doing medicine, never doing anything like that. I've blown my chance. Really, really, in my heart was like, I've blown my chance. And I just left it because it was like, I'm going to have this kid and I'm going to focus on this baby. And that was fine. Daniel was born, and then I had, the studying was still in my mind, like, to do this. Now in my heart it was more about nursing, because to get medicine you needed 3 A's. In this country you needed three A stars actually at A level. It was ridiculous. There was no way I was getting that. So I decided to do a different course, like, was it chiropractic or something like that, and it was going to give me a level 3 that would have got me into my nursing. And I done the first year, but it was a struggle. Like, I was working part-time, my husband was working full-time, we were financially struggling, we were trying to set up our home, and I didn't go back to do the second year, so I didn't get the full qualification, and I thought, this is not happening. I got pregnant with my second son. We were married at this time, pregnant with my second son, and all of a sudden we moved to a different town because there was no houses. God was saying no, no, no. The place we were living in, we tried to get a house, and God was clearly saying no. So we moved our 2 boys and we went to a different town to originally where my husband was from. My mum wasn't very happy about this. But God's plan, He's so sovereign. He is so sovereign. It's unbelievable. It doesn't matter what other people say. It doesn't matter if your family is trying to claw at you. And even as naive as I was, I didn't even realise all this spiritual stuff was going on. I hadn't a clue. But we're moving to another town because God needed me in that town. God wanted me in that town. To the church that I go to now, because God had a plan for my life. So off we go. And I have all my children. I have 4 children at this stage. Actually, I have 3 children at this stage. And my husband was made redundant. And God opened a window. The windows of heaven that were opened to me is unbelievable. God opened a window. And my stubbornness was like, I'm not going to sit here and look at him being upset about not having a job, because with a man, if they're not earning, then, you know, I felt so sick. I always was sick having my babies. And like the majority of the time I was hospitalised with sickness. Was just the thought of it actually is making me feel a bit sick now. Anyway, but I didn't be sick with her. I wasn't sick. I'd got some medication, and because I kept ending up in hospital with dehydration and hyperemesis, and I got very upset, and my husband was like, let's just go to the doctor. So he sorted that all out, and I got some anti-sickness medication to help me through the pregnancy, and I wasn't sick once. And I got onto the course, and it was like thinking now, God was like, now. I hadn't a clue this was all going on. So I went to the college course, and they also allowed me to keep my baby with me. So she went to the creche next door, and she was breastfed. And the hands of God in my life and my husband's life. If you just take a minute to sit back and say, God, we're so ignorant to Him sometimes, and we don't understand what's going on. We're naive and young. And when I look back now, because God allowed me to take my daughter, and I could breastfeed her, and I could still care for her while I'm studying. And my oldest daughter was able to go with me too, and that childcare in the college was all paid for. It didn't cost me a penny. Every course I've had to do, it's been paid for. It has not cost me or my employer one penny. It has cost the taxpayer, so for that I'm very grateful. Thousands of pounds we're talking, thousands. And our two boys were at school, and that allowed my husband to go out with this fella. It was his sister's boyfriend, and he was a joiner, and he would go, but he would take the hand out of him, really would pay him like buttons, but he was learning how to do roofing, he was learning how to do stud walls, and he was frustrated because he wasn't being paid for this, and he could only do a couple of hours in the morning, and then he had to get the kids, and he was the main carer for the kids throughout this time. He was very frustrated, but again, he wasn't realising what God was doing, and he was learning all of these things all along, because my husband's business now is based on all of that stuff, all of it. And sometimes you have to work for free and volunteer a bit so that you can get the skills that you need, and it's up to God how He decides to do it, and when He decides to do it. We just don't see it as God. And he was quite frustrated through that time because he didn't want to stay at home with the kids. Anyway, and he had family members, his mum telling him it's not a man's job to stay at home with the kids. But my husband was grateful by the end of the 3 years. Actually, it was 5. It was 5 years in total. It was the first 2 years I was at college part-time, so he was looking after them part-time. That sounds awful, they're both our kids, but like he was the main carer for like 2 or 3 days of the week. Actually 4 days. And then when I went to nursing school, it was full-time, full-on. 3 years he stayed at the home and was the main carer for the kids and the house and everything, the whole time. And he was very frustrated during that period, but that was God's will. It was God's will for our life. We were so frustrated doing it, and I was so tired studying. And then whenever I passed the college course, it was a 2-year part-time course, and I'm still working alongside this, and I was able to claim child tax credits in this in this country through the government to help support us. So we were financially stable through this time while I'm studying and my part-time wage, and my husband's earning nothing. And then when I got into nursing school, we needed another car because I was travelling a 2-hour journey to the university and back again every day. And placements were in various hospitals throughout the country. And my husband still needed a car for the kids to take them to school. So by this stage, our youngest daughter, Farah, is about just under a year old. She's about 10 months. So my husband had the full care of her throughout the day, and then our other 3 children, school and nursery, and sorting the home out. So men can do it. God put that in my husband to be able to do that. He was very good at it, actually. The house was really clean. Wasn't great at the washing, but I sort of done that bit. And then in the evenings when the kids were asleep, I would study right, like into the early hours of the morning. God gives you his strength to do it. He puts it inside you that you can manage to do this. Was it the easy way? No. Was it hard? Yeah. But you keep going forward. And God's will for your life is happening, whether you like it or not. And I qualified as a nurse. That's grand. That course was fully paid for by the government. That was, I don't know how much the college course cost. It was maybe about 2,500. Finance covered that. And then I went into my nursing school. It was a 3-year course, and that was 33,000. It's £11,000 a year to train a nurse. It was 33,000. And then I got my job in A&E, and everything worked out. My mum had retired at this stage, and she was looking after my kids, and she knows that in herself, that was completely divine how that happened. And then after that time, another course was provided for me through the job I was in. Again, the taxpayer paid for this, and it was another 2-year course. I didn't have to do the 3 years, but I had to do the 2 years. And the 2 years was children's nursing, so I had to go back to university again, retrain for another 2 years. So there's another £22,000. Actually more, sorry, that's more, because I was getting my basic salary from the trust while they held my position in the hospital to do this training. So that would have actually have been 26,000 pound for that year. And then I went back to my original job, and I'm looking after children in the hospital now, really sick kids, the sickest kids that came through the emergency department. I would have went to resus and looked after them as well as the adults. So I'm getting all these skills, and I become really fluent and really good at my job. And I'm not just saying that. My colleagues loved working with me. They loved the fact that I was on because of the kids were sick. They didn't love me, they loved my skills, and I become really strong. And the verses that come back to my head is whenever it says Jesus, you know, when he's in the tabernacle and he's starting to preach as a 12-year-old boy, and his mum and dad's like, let's go. And it says, and Jesus grew in favour with God and man. And throughout this time, I was grown in favour with people. And I didn't even realise my life was unfolding for the will of God. And he kept pushing and pushing and pushing me. Every time a course came up, I was like, I'll do it. I don't know why. And when I was on the courses, I'd be like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I think I shared before about that children's course. There was another nurse had got that one space, and they realised her qualifications weren't high enough. She needed to go back and do a top up of her degree, and they offered that place to me. So God moved people out of positions and will move his people into position, and that's how I ended up in that course. Haven't a clue. Completely divine. And that's fine. So we're now like 9, nearly 10 years into emergency care, and in the last year God starts making me unsettled. He's telling me that we're moving out of here, but I become hopeless. I'm living in the world, I'm doing all what I'm doing, and I become hopeless. And I would say to myself, I'll never get out of here, because I am so qualified. I need a job where I could look after adults and children, and I'm never going to find that anywhere else. I'm stuck here. And I would start, the lion voice of the devil would start to speak to me. I'm stuck here. I'm going to be here forever. And I loved emergency care, but I also didn't like the feeling of being stuck. And I knew I was going to burn out in emergency care because it's so complex. It's so fast paced. It is a very busy environment, and I was very, very tired, not okay. But God's telling me, move. And I hadn't a clue where to go. Anyway, my life blows up between me and my husband, and I move out of secondary care. So for the Americans watching, secondary care is hospital care in the UK. Primary care is like your general practice or family practice, you maybe call it, where your local family doctor is in the community. So I'm moving out of hospital and I'm moving into primary care. So I get a job in primary care, and that's completely divine. Go down my videos, and unbelievable how that happened. But I'm asking God, where am I going? Because I soon realised that God is the Lord of my life. And I started looking through my past, and God started showing me this. That was my hand, Emma. That was my hand. That was my hand. That was my hand. And I was like, I'm not doing this the wrong way anymore. Where do you want me to go? Opened the windows of heaven again, and this job opportunity came up, and I was offered a job by a general practitioner, our local community family doctor. Well, it's not local to me. I don't work in my locality. I work in a different locality because I don't know any of the patients. And actually, God has kept me in that side of town, because here in Northern Ireland we call it God's country because it has like a church and a mission hall on every single corner, and the power of God in that place is quite profound, and He has His hand all over it. And there's a lot of godly Christian people, but at the same time there's a complete demonic stronghold in that place to do with paramilitaries. It's probably one of the worst places where bitterness and hatred in our culture exists. Yet God has made it the most profound area of Christianity. C.S. Lewis was originally from there, and they have a whole monument and a whole thing to his books and stuff like that. So I know I'm in the right place, and God needs His warriors being planted in those strongholds of hatred and bitterness to pray against it and take authority and control. So that's why I believe I'm there. I've met so many beautiful godly people, and it's just been great. And that's I know I'm in the right place. Anyway, I get this job in primary care, and all of a sudden the windows of heaven open again. So it does. And I think I'm possibly in the wrong way. Hold on till I figure out where I am here. I'm lost to get my kids. We'll work it out. So the windows of heaven open, and I start to get these courses, and this is in the past 2 years I have completed my diabetes course. That was a full year, so I was partly doing that when I was leaving A&E and then into primary care, so about 6 months. Then I done my asthma diploma. That was another 3-month course. That was pretty intense. And then I completed my cervical screening for women's pap tests in America, or smear tests here in the UK, and got all these qualifications, and I'm about to start my prescribing course. So I got 16, when I was 16, years and years and years ago, God promised me something. And as soon as I finish this course, I will be assessing my own patients. I'll be prescribing for my own patients. I have my own caseload of like 150 diabetics in our practice. I have my own caseload for asthmatics, 150 of them. All the women's investigations that I do for the doctors. So I'm not a doctor. God made me a nurse. God knew my gifting was suited to nursing. And I'm under no illusion. If God wanted me to be a doctor, I would have been a doctor. But God's will, it's so sovereign, He's so divine. He knew nursing was better for me and my skill set and my heart. But He also knew the funding that I needed, because here in this country, in medicine, you have to pay for all of your training. Thousands of pounds our doctors pay. It's not covered by the government. You have to want to do medicine. God's plan. And he says it'll work out. And actually, this was the last year of this course, the way it was being offered. You couldn't have done a conversion from your adult degree. You would have to have gone back and done a master's, a higher level. And this was the last year, and that's what he said to me. That you told me this is the last year, Emma. You're stupid if you don't take this course. Take it, it'll work out, we'll work it out. And I would go forward, my husband would speak into me, and I would go forward. And I went forward not having a clue how I was going to get my kids minded. And COVID happened, and I was released to study at home. And I was at home with my kids every time. And they were studying, and I was studying. And unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. How that all worked out. God's magnificent plan in my life, and he is faithful when we are not faithful. I was hardly ever faithful to him throughout those years. I'm not saying, oh, don't worry about God, he'll sort it out for you. No, that was quite difficult for me. When you know you're out of sync with God, and you're all over the place, and it's difficult. It's not easy. And God's like, will you just listen to me and make this easier for you? And of course, we're off worrying. I just lived in worry. I didn't need to worry. I didn't need to worry one bit. And he had it all worked out. Unbelievable. His hand in my life. Unbelievable. And that promise is about to be fulfilled. Now I still have to do the course, but I know it's a divine thing. And yes, I'll have to do the work, but God will give me his strength to do it. And I don't really know where he's taken me after primary care. I don't think it's the end game. It might be, but I don't feel that it is. And God will guide me. But for now, that's where we are, and that's what we're doing. And he'll open those windows of heaven. Will just open. It's so the divine timing. We haven't got a clue what's really going on. God does. God does. And all along the way, my husband's learning these wee skills, and now his business, he's completely self-employed and is doing very well. Even though at the moment we're not together, but it's still going. God still blesses him in that area. And you know, he's so faithful. God is so faithful. I keep hearing it, and I keep saying it, and I give God the glory for that. And do you know, whenever I often wonder about having Daniel at that age, but God knew 20 years later my husband would leave the family home, and I needed some financial support to keep the roof over me and my kids' heads. My husband would give me some money for the kids, but it wasn't enough fully to pay my bills, and I'm still studying and working at the same time, and it was just a lot. And my son was 21, 22 at this time, and he's in a full-time job, and he was able to financially help keep the roof over our head for a good few months. Must have been 6, 7, maybe 8 months. He helped support me, because God was like, Emma, you're not working overtime here. We're not doing this again. I'll provide for you. God really taught me to trust him with that, and the way that he worked was unreal, unbelievable. And he started to teach me a lot of things, and I started to see God's hand in my life. I started to see his will for my life and what the heck was really going on here. And even when my son had bought his own house and he had moved out, God still provided. Money came all the time while I was studying. And now I'm going to embark on another year course. And God has fulfilled everything he's promised me. He brought me my husband. He allowed me to be a mum. I had 4 children, and he also fulfilled the promise he made to me to do medicine. So I work as a nurse, and I do a few wee clinics of my own to help support the doctors. I work under the doctors, but there's probably more courses coming after this where I'll be able to work completely independently on my own. But I don't know whether that's God's plan. I don't know. We'll just wait to see what he says. But God has fulfilled every promise and understand that there's always people that get hurt in these things and want to help. If you don't have that in your heart, where's your compassion? How can you sit and watch a child starve to death? And I'm really grateful that I live in a country where this morning I could have fresh, warm water to wash my body, and there's people who don't even have fresh water to drink, never mind get washed in. We just need to learn to be very grateful for what God has provided for us and where we live, because people don't have that, and that actually upsets me. So maybe that's where God sent me to. I don't know. We'll see. And in years to come, I'll update you with that. God hasn't. He's put that burden on my heart, but I don't know where we're going or when we're going. I haven't a clue. Because there's still some more studying to do. And God did tell me in Daniel. Daniel studied for 3 years. He studied for 3 years in Babylon with all of their things in the world, what the equivalent to the world nowadays. He had to study for 3 years. I've studied a lot longer, but in this period of time, I believe God's telling me there's 3 years of study, Emma, that you need to commit to here. And I've already completed. So we started in September 24 and all through 26 or 25, sorry, and then we're now in 26. So I think that's another year. God's saying another year, Emma. We need to complete this course. And we'll do it because that's what God wants me to do. Do I understand all of it? No. Is it going to make my life easier in my job? Yeah. Will it give me more skills to take with me wherever God sent me? Absolutely. So that's what we're doing. But God is faithful to fulfill His word, not because of us. He gives us favour with Him and with man. This is Samuel grew in favour with God and with man. Solomon, God loved Solomon. It's the only place where I see where God loved someone. It says that, and God loved Solomon. And God gave him favour with people as well. He was so wise. People looked to him. And if you're willing to acknowledge God and see His hand in your life and give Him thanks and understand He is faithful even when we're unfaithful, even when we make mistakes, God will use that. He used that pregnancy to help fulfill 20 years later the support that I needed from my son. My son is blessed because of that. He's so blessed. And I constantly say to him, Daniel, do you see God's hand in your life? I say that to my second son, do you see God's hand in your life? Because he didn't do well at school and his self-esteem was very low. He's a carbon copy of his dad, and yet he's working with his dad and he will take over the family business. God always provides. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how stupid you think you are. God will give you different skills with your hands, and He just so happened to give me skills of compassion and love for those that are actually the unlovable. Some of the slaps I took and some of the verbal aggression I took working in the emergency care, God gave me the strength for that. Other people would have had them filled in and punched around the head and whatever and been sacked by now. But He gave my husband his 2 hands to work for manual labour. And He's given my husband, I see it in his life now, favour with people to employ him. And I believe God's favours on his life even when he's unfaithful. Right now my husband's very unfaithful. But God's promises are true for him as much as they are for me. Because God will have compassion on who He will have compassion, and He'll have mercy on who He will have mercy. We don't get to choose. Look at Nineveh. He told Jonah to go, and Jonah was like, not a chance, disobedient. He says, is that right? My sovereign will is going to happen here. because God had compassion on Nineveh. Once they humbled themselves and they put sackcloth and ashes on them, they never even let their animals eat. They had to fast as well. And humbled themselves, God had compassion on them, and then Jonah was raging. I knew you'd make me do that. God will have compassion on who will have compassion, and mercy on who will have mercy. It's not up to us to tell him how to do it or why to do it. It's none of our business. None of our business. And he's maybe sent you, like Jonah, to be the prophet for the people that needs to hear it. Does it make sense to me? No. But God is so sovereign, I don't argue with him. I've just accepted his will for my life. And I will go through whatever I have to go through, and I will do whatever he tells me to do. And that's just the way it is. I don't get to choose. So, I hope that has made sense to people. I always believe. I don't get a lot of views on my videos. I don't care. I'm just obedient to God, because I know he will put this. I don't care if it's one person, 2 people, 5 people. He will put it on their video to help them understand maybe where they are, or if God has done it in another person's life, he can do it for you. And just a word of encouragement. So I'm going to leave it there because I'm lost and I'm really late to pick my girls up. So I'll come back and we're going to talk about Jonah again. We're going to talk about the Pharisees as well.